Good afternoon, participants. Welcome to the online webinar series for Appendix 3 exam and LDC of the Accounts Department. Today's topic is the social service obligations. So, as part of SSO or social service obligation, on an average, the railway recovers only 57% of the cost of the travel, and the remaining 43 paise per rupee for each ticket we are bearing as subsidy. This is not a traditional subsidy. Instead of cross subsidies from the money railways made from its freight operations. So due to this, our share in the freight segment goes to roadways. So today's topic is focus on the social service obligations. Sir, welcome, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the brief introduction on the subject. Good afternoon, participants. This social service obligation, it has been very debatable point. Again, this particular.
Can I unmute all the participants?
Yes, please. Yeah, you can.
Sir, all the participants are in mute. Can I unmute them, or we can?
In the end, we can. As you wish.
Okay, sir.
Right.
No. Okay, sir. At the end, we will unmute.
Yeah, that is better.
Start the queries.
So, this social service obligations, it is very much a debatable point. We knew that our railways is a departmental enterprise. That means we have to go into the government accounting aspects, as well as we should run our railway as a commercial enterprise also. This dichotomy is there in our system itself. As a part of that only, as a commercial undertaking, if anyone asks how much a social service obligation a railway is bearing, for that we should have an answer. This is not a relevant development. Earlier also, for so many years, we have been calculating this social service obligation. But when it was a trivial amount compared to our earnings, it was not a big problem, and we used to bear that. As Nageswara pointed out, this social obligation, it has grown enormously, and it is sometimes almost to the level of our passenger earnings. So this is very alarming. So therefore, in 2014-15, this has grown tremendously. This social service obligation, whatever we have calculated, it has become a large chunk of our passenger segment, and it has attracted because we were giving our mind to standing committee. Even in our publications also, we are making a mention, and to standing committee we have been telling, and standing committees on railways also, they are taking care, they are talking about the social service obligations which are being borne by railway, and they are also of the opinion that railway being a departmental enterprise, as a commercial entity, the government also should think of compensating in some way or the other for the social service obligations that are being rendered by railways. The trigger point for our discussion today is in my session on how to read a budget. There I mentioned that in 2017-18, passenger and other coaching services incurred a loss of 46,000 25 crore, 46, around 46,000 crore loss we have incurred, while our passenger services were 48,000 crore or 49,000 crore. So almost 95% of our passenger earning, we are incurring losses. So this incurring losses, immediately our mind will go to that extent that why should we incur that losses and why should we run passenger train services? That is not the issue here. Because we cannot altogether close our passenger segment. And because the freight operations are making a profit, so we made in 2017-18 45,000 or 46,000 crores profit we made. That is how our operating ratio we could maintain around 98% or so. Otherwise, our work would have been more than 100. So the moot question point here, what we have to discuss is, when we, as a commercial undertaking, it is our responsibility to point out that yes, railway is incurring certain losses, and this is the quantum of the passenger service on passenger services or whatever other coaching services also we are incurring losses. So it is our responsibility to tell to the policy makers, to the government also, as a commercial undertaking, we need to tell that how much is the social service obligation we are incurring. That's it. That is the main purpose of working out the social service obligations. And what I would like to say is, the passenger from passenger earnings, whatever 1 rupee we have earned, it ended up spending 1 rupee 95 paise. Normally, if you are talking as a commercial organization, no one will appreciate doing a business on loss-making entity. Immediately, our commodity mix, we have to change it. But railway, we cannot do because it is a government organization also. In as much as, because I am earning 1 rupee and I have to spend 1 rupee 95 paise, almost double to that in under passenger services. If I have to incur, then I have to wind up. But we can't, because ours is a government organization also, government department also. So when you're as a government department, what is that we can do? So that we will be dwelling how to go about on these passenger losses. Is it really something which we have to introspect into our cost system? Are there any inefficiencies are there which are contributing to some extent for this loss? So these are the aspects which we have to think. And when I say that the passenger business, we are incurring losses, immediately our viewpoint will go to the low fare structure which we are having. Why should we have a low fare structure? Can't we increase it? What are the problems? So these are all the things which we have to discuss, and we will be discussing today on those issues. One more important point which we have to make note of it is that under passenger business, except AC third and chair car, AC chair car, all other services are incurring losses. That means the amount what we spend, the expenditure what we incur, it is much higher than what we are we are earning through our tariff from our passengers. Only profit making is only AC third type and AC chair car. And if I remember correctly, even one CAG report also, it mentioned that gradually we have to increase where the commodity, which commodity is giving the profit. Now AC, third AC and AC chair car, these two services are giving profit. So increase them, just like any other commercial undertaking, how it will do. So, this is one more point which we have to remember. As I was making a mention that this is not a, that is calculating the social service obligations. It is not just a recent phenomenon. Even earlier, 1950s also, this point was raised by the respective ministries, railway ministries. Lal Bahadur Shastri ji, while presenting the budget of 1955-56 itself, he said that the financial effect on these concessions is partially reflected in the fact that average earnings per passenger during 1953-54 has decreased. Average earnings has decreased from 5.22 paise to 5.17 paise per mile. So this was recognized as a custom to tell to the parliament that yes, this is the problem which we are facing. Then second, Mr. CM Punacha, while presenting this 1967 and 68 budget, railway budget, he mentioned that it is difficult to estimate the amount of the concession on passenger fares, but it will not be it is not a insignificant amount. In some countries, it is recognized that such a social burden are to be borne by general exchequer and not by railways. This is not a new thought. This was in 1967 and 68 budget itself. The then railway minister, CM Punacha, has mentioned. So this is on these lines we have been developing that particular aspect. But unlike other countries, as mentioned by Mr. Punacha, it is not that we are asking something new, because in other countries also these social service burden are being managed by considered by the general exchequer. So keeping these things in view, after 2014-15, where our railway social burden, whatever we are calculating, it has crossed limits, then we made a hue and try and we wrote to our Ministry of Finance also. And later on, we asked the other ministries also to take the responsibility of giving back the money, whatever we are incurring on losses towards concessions. Of course, I keep that point for my discussion later on. So let us note that this particular social service obligation problem, it was recognized way back in 1950s, even 60s, even now also we are discussing, because as a commercial undertaking, I have to tell to the government that this much is the social burden I am incurring, whether to get back from general exchequer, as mentioned by CM Punacha, whether we get or not, that is a different issue. But as a commercial undertaking, we are supposed to calculate and tell to the government, so that final decision will be left to the government. So having dwelt much about this, the trigger point, why we are discussing today on these social service obligations. Now let us move into the actual topic. So as I said, IR is a departmental enterprise, and is railway is for a surplus enterprise or non-surplus enterprise? Is it for surplus enterprise or for non-surplus enterprise? How we will be taking? So our take will be for both. We cannot say that I'm not, because I am a government department, I'm not for surplus. I cannot say. Similarly, because I am commercial enterprise, so therefore I am for surplus. No, it is for both. The operations, railway operations of the railways, which are run on above cost basis, and there are certain activities which we carry below cost basis. So this, we have to live with this reality, and we should understand railways better if this gamut within which we have to operate. If we are sure, then there will be no grudge against anyone. So with this reality, now we will be developing our subject. So there are certain aspects, as I said, there are certain activities which we carry below the cost of basis. So these activities which are carried out by IR to provide affordable transport facility to the poorer sections of the society. We have to underline this, to the poorer sections of the society, and to facilitate the movement of essential commodities meant for mass consumption. So certain commodities are carried by railway much below the cost. So this is these we call them as social service obligations, SSO, social service obligations. So that means there are the losses for the railway will be on two fronts. One is unable to recover the costs, and another one is ending up with the foregoing the revenue. So ending up, this second one is bearing the social burden. That is ending up foregoing the revenue. I should have charged 100 rupees, but I decided to charge 50 rupees. That is foregoing the revenue, but unable to recover the costs. That means I have to get 100 rupees, but I will not be getting 100 rupees. My fare will not be 100 rupees. My fare structure, I will be getting much less than that. So if I fix my tariff much less than that, then it will be unable to recover the costs. So either way, whether we are foregoing our revenue in the form of, I can say, concessions, whether I am foregoing the revenue in the form of concession, or my tariff itself I fixed at much lower level. Why we should fix that, we'll discuss. So these are all the things that contribute for the losses. So these losses, whatever we incur, we call them as social service obligations, and you will find these social service obligations mentioned in the yearbook of railways. So this is what we want to tell to the people as well as to the government, that being a governmental departmental enterprise, we are bearing the social service obligations to so and so extent. But really, is it really that we are making these transport facilities to the only poorer sections of the society? That is the moot point which we have to address. So if once we knew that, suppose some concessions we are giving are being misused, or not they are not suitable to under this definition of a social service obligations, then in that case we can make a relook into the social service obligations. So having said that, now these social service obligations, what are the elements which we have? I said to the poorer sections of the people, and certain essential commodities also we will be carrying. So what are the elements that are available in the social service obligations? When we compute, what are the elements which we will be taking note of? Number one, there are certain commodities, essential commodities, because these are meant for mass consumption. Already I mentioned for mass consumption. So those commodities we will be carrying below the cost. That means if my cost is 1 rupee, I'll be taking them much below maybe 50 paise or 90 paise. So these are because this will have larger ramifications on the cost system of, because finally when suppose these essential commodities also, if we raise our tariff and carry at that particular level, then that cost will be borne by whom? The merchant, he will not, the firm will not bear that. Finally, it will be passed on to the consumer. Consumer means the people of India. So when it is being passed on, and if the government thinks that yes, it cannot be borne by the common man, so such commodities will be carrying much below cost. Why we should do this? Yes, now we should go to that first one. IR is a departmental enterprise. Being a departmental enterprise, being a department of India, Union Government of India, we need to carry certain welfare activities through railways. Whatever government wants to do, we have to carry out them. As a commercial enterprise, what is our responsibility is to see that there is no inefficiency in the system. If inefficiency is there, someone else will point out, yes, there is, you are having inefficiency, unnecessarily you are increasing your tariff. So that we have to examine, and if any inefficiencies are there in our system, we have to plug them and we have to eliminate them. At the same time, we have to ensure that the essential commodities are carried below the cost. So that is one element. And another one element is foregoing our revenue. That means concession on tariff in passenger fares. So full fare will be charging for certain passengers, but for certain people will be giving concession. So that concession also we are bearing. So we are making an effort that let other ministries bear that, so that our operational efficiency will increase. There will be certain liquidity will be there, certain money will be there in our hands to go for the other developmental activities. These social service obligations, they are becoming a burden on railway revenues. They are having an effect on the railway revenue. So therefore, we want those concessions also, we want to have a relook at them, and if possible, wherever it is not required, whenever it is not reaching to the poorest people, then in that case, we can have a relook, and then some concessions can be eliminated. So this is what another element of the social service obligation which we'll be having. Then another one is, this is very, very important. Of course, I will be giving the figures also. Heavy losses are incurred on suburban services. Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Secunderabad, and Chennai. So these are the suburban services where footfall is very heavy. At the same time, passenger kilometers are very heavy. At the same time, we will be incurring losses. So these losses, why should we bear? That is also a moot question. So whether these, they should be, we can think how these social services obligations can be eliminated in that case. Then whether these suburban services for whom we are giving to the respective state government people, whether the state government will be in a position to take the losses if we bill against them, whether they will be in a position to do that. So once we calculate these social service obligations, then we can think of the alternatives how to go about. Until we calculate, no one else will be knowing that how much is the social service obligation the railway is bearing. So therefore, we work out them and then indicate in our yearbook. Then one more point, one more element in the social service obligation is operation of uneconomic branch lines and certain new lines which are not profitable opened for traffic during the last 15 years. So all of you aware that we are uneconomical branch lines results will be advising every year religiously. हमारा रेलवे बोर्ड को हमें भी जाता है कितना अर्निंग्स आ रहे कितना एक्सपेंडिचर हो रहा and how much is the loss we are incurring every year will be giving. So that operation of uneconomical branch lines. So we are terming them as uneconomical branch lines. So when they are continue to be uneconomic branch line, why should we bear that? Is there any other alternative which we can think of? Can we close that branch line and give it to the state government to not to give a hardship to the area people who are residing there? A road can be laid on our railway system when we remove that rails, and then buses can be applied by state governments. So there are certain things, certain suggestions which we are giving, but there is stiff resistance from the governments as well as public for closing down those uneconomical branch lines. And coming to the new lines, the main all of us we are aware that without required IRR, internal rate of return calculated under DCF below 10%. Normally, we will not say that that line is financially viable. There is economic evaluation also will take place. So during the economic evaluation is to uplift the poorer areas, rural areas, or where the backward areas are there. So in such cases, certain times, even though the IRR shows negative or less than 10%, sometimes we will be going for a new line. But the point is, under the elements of social service obligations, we will be taking note of all the lines which were opened during the last 15 years, and whether IROR or ROR, whatever we have calculated in the beginning when we took up that particular project under social considerations, whether the same has improved anything, or is it still lagging. These are the aspects which we will be taking note of that, and then if that trend continues, the decline continues, then we can think of the new lines laying in the backward areas. So this is one area where the elements of social service obligation, one more area which we will be taking. And one more point is that operation of strategic lines. Of course, no doubt, there are 4 railways where this operation of strategic lines are located, and those 4 railways only have been categorized as strategic lines, and on that we will be incurring certain losses. Okay, these are recognized as strategic lines, but in the Northeast, we have laid so many rail routes which are not recognized as strategic lines, but for defense purposes, these were laid, but even then, those were not categorized as a strategic line. However, being in the hilly terrain and massive repairs and maintenance cost, it has to be borne by railway, and we will be bearing that. So those on that also will be incurring losses. And the last but not the least, and it is the highest of the elements of all these social service obligations. Of course, I have not given you the figures, I'll give you, but the highest is the pricing of passenger fare below the cost. Below the cost, when we keep these passenger fares, then that is eating away. That is why our earnings, when they were around 45,000 or 48,000, the losses were 45,000. That means around 95% losses of our passenger earnings are we are incurring losses. So the main reason is fare structure. The fare structure is below the cost we are keeping it. There is no doubt about that. But is it that alone contributing to this? That is the debatable point. So that we will discuss. So this pricing of passenger fares below cost. So now, having heard about all these elements, you will be getting a doubt that why should it all be? So for that, I once again tell that we should not forget the definition of our organization. IR is a departmental enterprise. As a government organization, we have to bear with them. As a commercial organization, we have to see the cost, see the expenditure, what we are incurring, any inefficiency are there, those inefficiencies we have to meet out. Therefore, we have to calculate these social service obligations. Now coming to the other details, the railways, they calculate these social service obligations in two terms. When I talk of social service obligation, two terms I will be using: gross or total social service obligation and net social service obligation. Now, what is the gross or total social service obligation and net social service obligation? First, we will work out on all the 6 elements which I have discussed earlier. We will arrive at the total social service obligation. That is the total social service obligation which railway will be bearing. Under that, railway will bear certain items for its own staff. As a social service organization, social service activity, certain cost will be incurring for our employees, because a larger chunk of our central government employees will be defense and railways only. So railways will be bearing staff welfare cost. Not only that, we also incur law and order cost. These two costs from the times immemorial, we have been treating them as a social service obligation cost. That is staff welfare cost and law and order cost. So out of the total social service obligations, losses which we are incurring, these two we will be excluding them. When we exclude them, that remaining amount, suppose 100 rupees is my total social service obligation, total losses. Out of that, say staff welfare cost is say 10 rupees and law and order cost is 5 rupees. So 100 minus 10 minus 5. That 85 is the net social service obligation. Now, you may be getting a doubt. Sir, why we should, because social service obligation, anyhow, we have to tell to the government that how much is the social service burden, social obligation which we are incurring, total burden we can tell. But at why we are reducing staff welfare cost, which is incurred for our railway people, and law and order cost, which on our RPF, GRP, whatever we are incurring, why we are excluding them? Because with a hope that at some point of time, Government of India may reimburse that social service obligation. If the finance ministry agrees for reimbursement, then at least we may get the net social service obligation. So the gross, okay, but out of that, because social service cost, which anyhow, whatever we are incurring for our employees, and the law and order for the railway purpose, whatever we are incurring, these two we will be reducing, and then the net amount, at least if government agrees for reimbursement, if there is a point for our reimbursement, for our argument, then we can get at least net social service obligation. That is why we traditionally, we are calculating the total social service obligations, and from them staff welfare cost will be reducing and law and order cost also will be reducing. So this concept you should be clear. So now let us go into the figures. So the quantum of net social service obligations, I already made a mention that right from many years back, this concept, social service obligation concept, was there. So of the recent years, from 11-12, you can see it was 16,000 crores is the social service obligation, total net social service obligation. That is after removing our social welfare cost, staff welfare cost and law and order cost, how much we incurred as the social and social service obligation net is 16,620 or around 16,000 crores, you can say. Gradually, you can see the graph that it is increasing and steeply started increasing from 2017-18 onwards. And now it is 45,000, 2019-20. This is the latest yearbook which we have. So under 2019-20, our net social service obligation itself is 45,000 crore. And you can imagine how much will be the gross or total social service obligation. I'll come to that also. So you should appreciate that the social service obligations, net social service obligation, it is gradually increasing from 2011-12, 16,000 to 45,000 in 2019-20. Now, the total service obligation, so net, how much was there, and law and order, staff welfare, how much was there, and law and order, how much was there. If you add all these things, it is the total social service obligation. See, you can see the net social service obligation is 45,542, say 46,000, and here 8,000. So 46 plus 8, 54,000, 54,000 plus 5,000, 59,000. That means in 2019-20 itself, around 60,000 crores we incurred loss. Around 60,000 crores we incurred loss. Total social service obligation cost, it is 60,000, we can say. Net for 45,000 or 46,000. So this is the quantum. So in order to appreciate how much is social service obligation we are bearing, that's why I gave this slide. Now, if a percentage of the total revenue and the total expenditure, the net social service obligation, say 45,000. So as a percentage, how much it is to the net, to the total revenue, how much out of the total revenue, the social service obligation, net social service obligation, what is the percentage? And what is the net social service obligation, say 45,000. So how much is its percentage to the total working expenses? Can you imagine? It is around, in 2019-20, it is around 20% or 22%. Earlier, in 2015-16, it is around 17% or so. So it is quite sizable amount. Maybe it may be going to 25% also. So now let us see. In 2015-16, out of the total revenue, our net social service obligation was 16.5%. And the same with reference to the expenditure, it is 18%. Now in 2019-20, that is 45,000 or 46,000, that is 26% of the total revenue. That means 1/4 of our revenue we are incurring losses. This is what we should learn. We should know. Around if you take that 45,000 or 46,000, it is coming to the 22% of the total working expenses. So I want to impress that this much is the loss which we are incurring. Then in 2019-20, now segment wise, segment wise, we will see how much is each segment contributing to the total social service obligation of 60,000, how it is made up. Now let us see first element what we discussed is essential commodities. So what are these essential commodities? Like fruits and vegetables, salt, charcoal, bamboos. So these are all certain items for mass consumption they will be going, and because they have, if we increase, it will have an impact on the market prices. Therefore, we will carry much below the cost. So that total service, out of the total service obligation, the contribution of these essential commodities, which we carried, it is around 301 crores only. Out of 60,000 crore, so essential commodities are around 300 crores. So it is somewhat negligible only. However, when you look at this, which essential commodity is contributing to the losses? That is, salt is more. Salt percentage is more. More loss was incurred in 2019-20. It was salt. Every year it will change. Previous year it was fruit and vegetables. So it changes. But these commodities, that is the loss, it is 2.49% of total revenue in TKM, and freight earnings, it is 1.57. So this much is the loss which we are incurring on the social service obligation towards carrying essential commodities. Why we carry? Again, we being a government department, we have to carry, and then we'll be bearing. And what we are doing is, we are, as a commercial organization, we are quantifying and telling that 301 crores is the loss which we are incurring. Now let us go to second segment. So second segment is concession in passenger fares. Coming to these concessions, we all knew more than 50 concessions are there. Different segments, different categorizations were there. So these concession means carrying below the tariff. Tariff is 100, but I intend revenue, I want to forego the revenue. I intend to carry at 75% or at 50% or at 40%. There are different concessions are there. You will be surprised. So many concessions we are giving. So more than 50 under these categories will be giving the concessions. So now the point is, even the newspapers, magazines, because we are getting magazine at a cheaper rate, but when it is carried at a higher rate, it will be much more. So postal tariff, military traffic, and traffic to northeast, we carry much below the passenger fare. So this total cost, and apart from that, we also carry some emergency relief for the fodder, famine areas, much below the cost of our system. So the concession in passenger fare, that is one major chunk. And apart from that, we carry other traffic for emergency relief also we carry. And that total, it is coming to 2,000 crores. 2,000 crores. So 300 crores for essential commodities. In carrying essential commodities, we incur loss, and carrying, giving concession to the passengers, we are incurring around 2,000 crore. So as I was making a mention in the introduction, we made an effort that let the sports activity, let other department will take place, and senior citizens, let some other ministry take those concessions. But it has not been rectified. So this is the revenue foregone under passenger fares for around 2,000 crore towards concessions. Then one more point is, I was making a mention that the losses on suburban services, it is enormous. We carry men, but all the suburban services, we incur losses. So there are, as I said, Chennai, Calcutta, Mumbai, and Secunderabad, and losses are hopping 7,000 crores, we can say. So 7,000 crores loss we are incurring on suburban services. And the main reason is we are not increasing the passenger fare. The cost is very high, whereas the rise in the tariff, it is much, much less. For 5 rupees, we carry for 20 kilometers. So we are not increasing. Another one is uneconomic branch lines. Another segment is, so 300 crores. Next one is 2,000 crore. Next one is around 6,000 crore we saw on suburban. And now uneconomical branch lines, let us see. So when I say uneconomical branch lines, commercially unviable. So Railway Reforms Committee, it said that it has recommended that 40 uneconomical branch lines should be closed. Out of, we are having around 99 uneconomical branch lines. Out of 99 uneconomical branch lines, 40 were advised by the Railway Reforms Committee to close, but we could close only 15. So there is much more to be done in this, and the loss what we incurred was around 2,400 crores. 2,400 crores, and the money what we have invested on these uneconomical branch lines is around 3,500 crores. So how to go about? Because there is a stiff resistance from the public, and state governments are also not willing to close those uneconomical branch lines. Even those which were suggested by Railway Reforms Committee, we are not able to do that. Still 35 to be closed. So we gave so many alternatives to them. We will give land, we remove our rail and make them let state government lay road and run buses, so that those weaker section people, the backward area, will not get affected. So this is what we are doing, but it is not giving due result. Then one more point is, new lines opened for traffic during the last 15 years under underdeveloped areas. That means on social consideration, how many we have taken up? So around 15 such lines were identified, and they are not improving the ROR on the expected in the initial stage. In many cases, ROR even deteriorating from year to year. That means, suppose 1%, I thought at the beginning, 1% it is going to yield. It is not improving. I expect at least 2% to 5% increase. But on the other way, it is going to -1, -2, like that it is going. So this is giving much problem. And here in this segment, it is not quantified, but we are telling that these are the lines which are incurring losses from year after year. So I can say I have taken a few from the yearbook. Say one -7.44 ROR, which was given at initially original cost, and no doubt you can think that it has been taken on economic considerations. So therefore, because it is -7. So, but see, over the years, in 2017-18 and 18-19 and 19-20, -14, -15, -16. That means it is increasing. The losses are increasing. So this is one. And another one is also same result. Initially, it was -2%, but now in the last 3 years, it was -12, -13, -14. And here, initially it was 18.18%, but -4, -5, -5. And another one is -4.8. Here there is slight improvement. That is -2, -2, -2. Still, it is negative only. It is not becoming positive. So these are all the results which we can see, and we are telling that these are the new lines which are open on social considerations, but we are incurring losses. Eventually, they may become uneconomical. So that's what I want to make a mention. And one more is operation of strategic lines. As I made a mention, only 6 lines were there on Northern Railway, NF Railway, NWR, and WR. So these are the strategic lines. And as I said, on the border areas also we are having, and these are being maintained by railways despite the steep operational losses, and the losses on account of these strategic lines, it is around 1,604, around 1,600 crore. So operation of strategic lines, we cannot do away with that. So what we can think, is there any inefficiency in our structure? In our cost structure, is there any inefficiency? If any inefficiency is there, if you reduce, then automatically the losses on operational cost, they can come down. Then one more, very important, last but not least, the pricing of passenger fare below the cost. It is not only promoting, it is contributes not only promoting economic and industrial growth, but also providing certain services below the cost of operation in the interest of common man. So such services places our Indian Railway that it cannot take our fare structure tariff to much higher level. So therefore, we'll be keeping them at much below the cost what we incur. So this is giving a problem that why we cannot increase fare. We cannot increase fare because when we increase the fare, then the poorer sections, whatever we wanted to have, that welfare activity, it will not be fulfilled. So therefore, we have to carry these passengers of the poorer section people much below the cost of operation. This is the problem which we have, and mind-blowing figure is the total losses because of this pricing, keeping our prices much below the cost. It is around 45,430 crores. So all these put together, the total social service obligations is around 60,000. Out of 60,000, around 7,000 on staff welfare will be incurring, and around 5,000 we are incurring on law and order. If you remove, and 45,000 crore will be incurring net social service obligation. So now we need to look into how can we reduce these social service obligations. Losses on social service obligations. We have to look within the system. Can we do anything? So that is what we have to think of it. So now, having said that, I would like to tell you this 45,000 crores, whatever operational losses on passenger segment, how they will be worked out. Because for everything it is available, the figure is available. This 45,000, how it will be done? Because we knew that our passenger services or our expenditure, whatever we incur expenditure, it is not bifurcated into passengers or goods services. Then how can we say that our expenditure is much below the cost? How can we say that? So how this assessment will be made on passenger services, this 45,000 crore loss, how it will be done? There is a formula, and this formula religiously will be following from year after year. So how it will be done? Now you see the earnings, passenger and other coaching earnings, no issue. So passenger earnings, because it is passenger segment only. So straight away, whatever our earnings are there for that, say 2019-20, so that earnings I will be taking. Then the problem is other coaching only. So other coaching and sundry. So this other coaching also, it is on coaching side only. That is essential commodities, if any, carried by passenger trains. So that straight away I can take. So, but the problem is with sundry and miscellaneous earnings. These sundry and miscellaneous earnings, it is a mix will be there. So some commodities, essential commodities, we may carry by goods train also. In such case, then what is the share of passenger and what is the share of goods? So this I have to decide. So is there any mechanism for us to decide? Absolutely, we do not have. So earnings will be accounting for, but we cannot say that how much is the share of goods and how much is share of passengers on this sundry or miscellaneous earnings. We cannot say, because service wise it will not be available. So therefore, normally this share will be working out based on the statistical statement number 15 will be there. So this annual statistical statement number 15, it will give you the ratio of coaching services and goods services. So that allocation will be there. So as per that ratio, my sundry earnings and sundry and miscellaneous earnings I will be sharing, and then the total earnings, whatever we show in our account current, same it will tally. But only thing is, now for my passenger segment losses, I'll be taking A1, that is passenger earnings, A2 coaching earnings, other coaching earnings, and the share of passenger, because I am working out the passenger segment loss only. So therefore, A.32 share of passenger under sundry and miscellaneous earnings, how much? So that will be the passenger or coaching earnings. Okay, so this is earning part. Now I should know, for carrying this, how much is the cost I have incurred. So what is my expenditure in 2019-20 now? So we all knew that this OWE, excluding pension fund it will not be added. So OWE will be taking, and then out of this OWE, it is not bifurcated into coaching or goods. So again, I'll be taking the annual statistical statement number 15 help, and I'll be bifurcating, that is railway board will be bifurcating these OWE, share of goods and share of passenger and coaching. So share of passenger and coaching only I am considered, because passenger segment loss we have to incur. So that will be taking. Then, so in that, the share of passenger and coaching I'll be taking. Then appropriation to DRF, because pension fund I am not considering here. So appropriation to DRF I will be taking. And this appropriation to DRF also, how much is the share of goods and how much is for passenger and coaching, it will not be there in our FMIS. So therefore, I'll take the help of statistical statement number 15. So what is the ratio given there? Same ratio, it will be applied on DRF, and then share of passenger coaching, that only I'll be considering for passenger segment, arriving at the passenger segment loss. So therefore, the expenditure on passenger and coaching services, that is what the intention. So passenger, the expenditure which I incurred on passenger and coaching, it is the C12, that is OWE passenger and coaching share, and DRF share of passenger and coaching services. These two I will take, and this will give me the expenditure which I incurred to earn so much earnings which I showed in the previous slide. Now, what are the net loss of the passenger segment? So what I will be doing this earlier, what is the earning which I had, and the passenger and coaching expenditure which I incur, that difference, it is the loss, passenger and coaching loss. And that loss is around 45,000 crore, which we will be showing as a segment, under last segment, that is losses under passenger segment, total losses. Around 45,000 crore we have shown. This is how we will show. But after knowing this loss, how we will be calculating our social service obligations, you will be getting a doubt how authentic is this particular calculation. I will discuss this later. Let us see some graphs also. So this is 2019-20 total social service obligations, and that total service obligations segment wise, whatever we have seen, 45,000 it is on passengers. Okay, then 1,600 strategic lines, 2,397 uneconomical branch lines, and 6,938 it is on EMU Suburban, and 2,059 it is on concessions, and 301 is on essential. So what I have discussed so far, it is in a pie diagram I have shown, and compare with 2018-19, and there is not much change. And as a percentage, if you want, as a percentage of also, you can see 77% of the total losses contributed by the low fare. 77% low passenger fare, and 11% on Suburban, 3% on concessions, 4% on uneconomical branch lines, and around 3% on strategic lines. So this is how we can remember each component of the percentage in 2019-20. Then I am taking you further to the low fare passenger segment. How so much 45,000 crore loss out of 46,000 which we earned. Why it is making so much loss? Here it is. The passenger revenue segment, if you see, non-suburban, upper class, we are earning 140 paise per passenger kilometer. 140 paise we are earning. And the second class mail bar express, 40 paise we are earning per PKM. But come to second class ordinary, we are earning only 23 paise. Now come to non-suburban. Non-suburban, we are earning 52% all put together, only 52% we are earning. Suburban, if you take again, only 20 paise we are earning. So total 48% only on passenger side we are earning. So from this, you will understand that the loss making, the losses are on account of two fronts, major. One is second class ordinary, because we are not increasing the fare. Second one is the suburban. Around 6,000 crores loss what we incurred, it is yielding only 20 paise per PKM. And here 23 paise second class ordinary it is yielding. And one more, class wise, if you look at number of passengers in million, 186 million passengers, and of the total passengers it is 2%. But the revenue what we are getting is 18,000 crores, and the percentage is 36%. Upper class, and in this upper class also, please remember that only AC chair car and AC chair car and third AC, these two only giving the profit, and with that we are getting 36%. of the revenue, of the total revenue, what earnings which we got, it is 18,000 crore we are earning with 2% of the total passengers which we carry. Okay. Now, second class, mail or order express. This, they are contributing around 17%. And 26,000 crores we are revenue earning, we are getting from mail bar express and including sleeper also. And we are, the percentage of the total earnings is around 51%. Now come to second class ordinary. Second class ordinary, 1,851 million we are carrying them, but they are 22% of the total passengers which we carry, whereas our earning from these passengers, 1/4 at most we are carrying, but we are getting only 3,000 crores. 3,000 crores, and that too 6% only. It is 6% of the total revenue. Then, so total non-suburban, if you take, around 94.39% revenue we are getting from non-suburban. And 47,000 crore is non-suburban revenue. And the percentage of the total passengers which we carry, these are 43% is non-suburban. Now come to suburban. Suburban, you see, 4,000 million we are carrying, and the percentage of the total passengers, if you take 56%, you are carrying more than all non-suburban. But you are earning only 2%, sorry, 2,000 crores only you are earning, whereas the percentage wise of the total earnings, if you take, is only 5%. So these are the two red, in red what I have shown. These two are the main areas where contributing towards the losses on the low passenger fare. You are carrying more people, 22% and 56% people there, we are carrying them. But what they are giving, only 6% and 5%. So that means second class ordinary passengers, both suburban and non-suburban, constitute 80%. See, these two, 80% of the total traffic carried, but they are providing only 12%, 6 plus 5. So around 12% of the passenger earnings. That is because of this, we are having the losses. Then, having said this, I need to talk about the Niti Aayog on social service obligations. In 2014-15, when we made a point to the standing committee also of the railways that we are incurring so much losses and the government should bear or should somehow compensate the railways. At that point of time, Niti Aayog has submitted a report. This Niti Aayog submitted a report on social service obligations. They have gone into our calculations and then they made certain comments. This Niti Aayog report of 2014-15, it is an eye-opener for all us also, because this was done by none other than the then member of Niti Aayog, Mr. Vivek Debroy. Now he is chairman of the Economic Advisory Council to PM. And this was prepared by another person, OSD of Niti Aayog, Mr. Kishore Desai. So these two people, they made out a report on the social service obligations. They looked into what is that actually railway is making a point. Is it real or something else? They have gone into that. So let us learn to the third party also because this is the think tank which we have. So what they are thinking about railways and railways claim on say 60,000 or from 16,000 net in 2011-12 social service obligations, now 45,000 542 crore net social service obligation, which we are claiming in 2019-92 and 2019-20. And the total social service obligations in 2019-20, 45,542, 7,000, 6,000, it is almost around 69 or 60,000, 59 to 60,000 crore, which we are claiming. Is it okay with that? So what is that Niti Aayog has to say on our social service obligations? Surprisingly, they have not negated the claim of the railway totally. They could not brush aside that. They said that yes, there is truth to the extent of 80% of its claim, but 20%, it is, you cannot say that your tariff is low, and you have to look within the inefficiencies. Where you have to look with, you have to look within the inefficiencies that are prevailing in your system. That's what it is telling. So this is the crux of the issue which I wanted to tell. If any inefficiency is there in our cost structure, then we have to remove that. So with that, let us go into what Niti Aayog has said on social services. It has impacted the flexibility to operate this business on commercial principles. Yes. When we are not able to have, say, I am getting around 58,000 crore, and out of that 95% I am making losses, then there is no leverage for me to go for, there is no leverage for me for the net surplus. There will be no surplus. My surplus is dwindling. When my surplus is dwindling, I cannot go for development, cannot give money for development fund. I cannot pay for my IRFC lease charges under capital fund, and I cannot go for debt servicing fund. So these are the problems which I have. Therefore, I have to go for EBR, extra budget resources. Not only extra budget resources, sometime nowadays I'm going into again. We will try to dwell on that on different day. The privatization of trains. Why we are making? Because I'm not having that much leverage. So these social service obligations, they are impacting my flexibility to operate this business on commercial principles. That is one point. The second point is the cross-subsidization. Nageshwara Garu, in the initial remarks, he mentioned this cross-subsidization, that is actually when I am making 48,000 crore loss I am making, and 45,000 profit I am making on the passenger freight business in 2017-18. Therefore, I could give operating ratio, healthy operating ratio. Otherwise, I cannot. But is it right? Carrying passengers much below the cost and fixing my freight tariff at much higher level, is it good for the economy of the country? So this was the question which was posed by Niti Aayog, because higher goods tariff, eventually it will be passed on to common public. No merchant will keep that with him. And it is one. And second one, our railway freight, it is dwindling. The freight share of the railway, it is dwindling. So that we can avoid only when the leverage was given to eliminate the cross subsidization, keeping the passenger fare much below the cost of operation. It is not correct when you run the railway, if you want to run the railway on commercial principles. And fare hike is not the only way to deal. Yes, as I said initially, that is one way. Yeah, fare hike we have to make it, but it is not the only thing. And we have to look at the inefficiency, if any, is there in the cost structure. Why Niti Aayog has come to this particular point is that for AC classes, it observed that the average tariff level is much higher than its equivalent fare for a AC bus. Hence, therefore, what they say is the losses in AC class is not attributable to higher tariff base cost, but the structure of higher the structure of higher than its fare structure. The cost, the inefficiency which we have, that is contributing, but not the fare structure. This is what, because the fares which we give for AC class are much higher than the bus fare. This is what the Niti Aayog said. So we have to look within. So it has summed up that 80% of the losses on passenger could be attributable to the low tariff level, so which we have to address, and the balance 20% inefficiency. So one more important point is that the demand for transport is elastic, and IR has a limitation on increasing the fare, which would be driven by competition. Because if you go on increasing the fare also, sometime even just like how the freight is shunning away from our railway, and there will be a point where our passengers also shun away from railway. So we'll be losing at both ends. So that should not happen. So that is why there is a limitation for our Indian Railways also. So the dynamic pricing also we initially thought of, but later on it proved costly for us. Then it is also observed that the calculation method. Yeah, I was making a mention, the way in which we made the calculation, the percentages I took from statistical statement, and that is not the correct way to calculate the cost system. So calculation of the financial impact under recovery due to lower tariff in non-suburban services is unrealistically high, not scientific and accurate. This is what it was observed by by Niti Aayog. And the calculation factor does not factor the efficiency of the various expenditure. We are taking only expenditure, but that expenditure is optimal, fuel efficiency is taken care, or whether that services are required or not, we are not going into that. That is why our cost system is historical cost only we are taking. So that we are not taking care. And one more important point is that the calculation does not factor railways' potential to leverage the existing assets. That is land banks utilizing better way, and stations beautification, and then letting them, and such things which could increase our non-fare revenue, that we are not looking at. So that's what the Niti Aayog said in 2014-15. Now we are seeing all these things. We are taking care one by one. Then finally, this Niti Aayog, what it suggested, it advised that, number one, to visit the concessions and low fares. So we have to fix them. So because Niti Aayog also has agreed that 80% we can contribute for low fare. So the fare structure we have to look in and revisit out the concessions, whether it is easy or the concessions given by us to the patients, to the sports persons, to the senior citizens, to the women, or to large section of people, n number of section students. So whether they are reaching to the poorer people, or we are just giving to all. So the subsidy system, we have to look at that. And social cost in passenger services, we have to address that. And then rationalize goods tariff distortion. Otherwise, the freight share will further go down and will be yielding to roadways. So to work on the cost optimization measures and enhance its non-revenue, so that the loss on social service obligations, they may come down. So this is what it was mentioned. Now at this point, I will stop my lecture, and I request the participants to give their opinion or advice or their mind on the issues which I mentioned. Yeah, Nashagaru, you can unmute all.
Oh, sir. Okay, sir.
Any questions are there? Yeah, I will also see the chart.
Yeah, all are unmuted. You can ask the queries.
Yes, participants, because this is one aspect which we will be many a time will be discussing these social service obligations, and even in newspapers also many time it has come. But is it a debatable point or any introspection that is required? And I would request all of you to give a thought on this, and you can ask any questions on this. And mainly this topic I intend for these LDC people. Yeah, please.
Participants, any queries?
Just 1 second.
In chat box, no queries, sir.
Yeah, only one person has asked me, what is the meaning of a social service obligation?
That is in the beginning.
Yeah, so the social service obligation is on account of carrying our passenger traffic below the cost of operation, or carrying the essential commodities below the cost of operation to give much leverage to the poorer section of the people. That we are calling them as social service obligations. And we also dwelt on that around 6 segments we made, and then we are giving them, this is the total cost which we have incurred, and giving to the government that this is the social service obligation which we are meeting towards our staff, and law and order, we are reducing that, and net social service obligation, we are telling them that this is my net social service obligation. Of course, we are not requesting now, but with the intention that at some point of time, union government may think on this, and they may reimburse our at least net social service obligation, though not total service obligations. Yeah.
So one more query in the chat box. Is possible anyway to come in profit the Indian Railway?
Is it possible anywhere to come in profit? Yeah.
As long as it is departmental enterprise, it's not possible.
No. Yeah, I can say in one way that we are not looking at the profit.
Yes, exactly.
Because, yeah, being the government organization, we are not. That is why the one question in my initial slide itself I put: is railway for surplus or not for surplus? I can say both. So it is not about the earning profit or loss. Where inefficiency is there, that we have to plug. And if government wishes that, yeah, to a certain extent, ordinary passenger fare you increase, then we will be in a position to increase. Absolutely no issue. Yeah.
Spita Gupta, please unmute and.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Sir, Niti, I said that the inefficiency in railways due to loss of
on this
earning.
passenger segment.
Yes, sir.
Hmm.
What the meaning of inefficiency?
Inefficiency means
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
our expenditure, whether we are incurring, because you saw the calculation how we made. We took the earnings on passenger and we took the expenditure, total expenditure, and that expenditure we have bifurcated into goods and coaching. And on passenger and coaching side, what is the total expenditure I have arrived at? And the difference between these two only, I am telling that it is the social service burden on passenger side. I am incurring around 45 crore. Say, for example, in 2019-20. But what I want to say is that expenditure, is it really to the tune of what is required?
Sure.
That means the expenditure I am showing, say 2019-20, this is my expenditure. I am bifurcating. Okay, that bifurcation also Niti Aayog pointed out, it is not scientific. That leave about that. But now the question is that inefficiency is, you are telling this much is the expenditure. Is it that 100 rupees, say 100 rupees to be spent? Is it that 100 really to be spent on that? Or is it 80 rupees only to be spent? If it is 80 rupees, then we have to look into our inefficiency. That means we are incurring more expenditure than required. Say, for example, one example also Niti Aayog has given you that, say, for example, SFC or SEC, specific fuel consumption or a specific energy consumption. So those figures really sometimes what they give, what in the budget level, what we show and what finally fructified, there is large variation. So I said only one example on SEC and SFC. Say for example, bed rolls. You take any service, whether we are incurring that expenditure on repairs and maintenance, on operations, is it that much expenditure required or not? Is there any such system on our railway? There is no such system. There is no costing system. We have costing system, but it is historical cost only we are having. But for this service, 100 rupees is the cost. If that is there, then we can say, yes, I am above cost or below cost. But now I cannot say that I am above cost or below cost. Only my expenditure only I am telling whether that expenditure, whether it is required for that level of traffic or not. That much only Niti Aayog has pointed out.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other queries, please? We are also paying. Yeah, that's right. Because being as initially I mentioned, our role is dichotomy is there. In our role itself, dichotomy is there. So as a government department, whatever government wants to do welfare measures through railway, that we have to follow. At the same time, it is our responsibility. You may ask me, sir, why we are calculating so many things? Because being a government, a commercial department, commercial organization, being categorized as a commercial department in government, we are bound to work out the social service obligation, and we will continue to do this. Even we saw, even 1966, 77 onwards also, we have been asking and we have been reflecting these social service obligations. But now time has come that these social service obligations, they have increased enormously. That is why we are making a point that government should reimburse. Because in other countries, most of the railways are private run railways, and they have an understanding with the government, MOU they will enter. And then at the end of the year, what are the concessions to be given at the beginning, the government will tell, and they will give those concessions. And at the end of the year, they raise the bill and government will pay for it. But that kind of system is not there in place in our Indian Railway.
Any more queries? Sir, I hope no queries from the participants, sir.
Yes.
In one of this session. On behalf of the Academy, I thank faculty Shri K. Damodar Prasad Garu for wide coverage on this topic and good interactive. Thank you, sir. Tomorrow we have session at 3 p.m. to 4:45. Login time is 2:45 p.m. The topic is short notes in stores accounts. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Naisra Garu.
Thank you, sir.